Hey everybody! Today we're going to practice factoring trinomials that have a number in front of the x squared. Factoring allows us to rewrite expressions and may help us solve expressions later in the unit. On Monday, we were factoring the product and sum method, but none of our expressions had a number in front of the x squared in the beginning. We only had a 1 as our leading coefficient. And remember, I also looked at only the c to find factors of it. C times the 1 would only allow me to look at C. But today I have a number, a different number that is larger than 1 as my leading coefficient. I wonder how that's going to affect my work. So my first step is to find the factors of A times C. So I want to label my parts here. This is A, this is B, this is C. A will always be the leading coefficient with the highest exponent. B will be the next highest. C will always be your constant number, the one without a variable. So A times C. A times C. 3 times negative 14. That equals negative 42. So just like I did last week with looking for factors of my last term, this time I'm going to look for factors of my A times C. So I'm now looking for factors of negative 42. We're going to use that same strategy of creating a table, where you're going to find factors of negative 42 that add up to the middle term. Notice that my middle term has no number, but we do know that there's an understood 1 here when the variable is by itself. So I'm looking for factors of negative 42 that add up to a positive 1. I can start with 1 times negative 42. I also could say negative 1 times positive 42, because both of those will give me back negative 42. What else? What about 2 times negative 21, or negative 2 times positive 21? And what else? Numbers that multiply to, I could use 7, negative 7 times, positive 7 times negative 6, or negative 7 times positive 6. So all of these multiply back to negative 42. So once I find my factors, now I need to add them and see which one is going to add up to my middle term, which is a positive 1. So if I take 1 and add it to a negative 42 and put this in my calculator, it's going to show me that I get a negative 41. That's not the middle term. Negative 1 plus a positive 42, that gives me positive 41, because it's just like saying 42 minus 1. 2 plus a negative 21, that's going to give me a negative 19. It's too big, doesn't work. Negative 2 plus positive 21, it's like 21 minus 2, which is, again, positive 19. That doesn't work. So this was a no, this was a no, this was a no, this was a no. Let's go here. What about 7 plus a negative 6? If I type this in my calculator, it's the same thing as saying 7 take away 6, which is a positive 1. Ding, ding, ding. That's it. I found my answer. Don't need to fill out no more of my table because I ran into my answer. Found 2 numbers or factors that multiply to negative 42, which is my A times C, and that adds up to my middle term, which is positive 1. So this one is a yes. So I know that I'm going to use the integer 7, positive 7, and negative 6. Now, the next step is to rewrite to replace your middle term. So you're going to take the trinomial and now turn it into a quad meaning 4 terms, quadratic expression. So to do that, I'm going to rewrite 3x squared, which was my A, original A, but I'm going to change the plus 1x and use my numbers. Plus 7x, because it's positive, and use a negative 6x. This positive 7x minus 6x, it does give me back my middle term of positive 1x. And I'm going to rewrite my C, that was in the original expression, which was negative 14. Now I have a quadratic expression, because it's 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's my next step? It says, third, factor by grouping. How do you do that? Well, you want to choose the best terms to put in parentheses together. So I have a group here and a group here. If I write my 3x squared, which term in the middle is best to put here with 3x because they have something in common? Should I put 7x there? They do have 7 in common. I mean, an x in common. What about negative 6x? Ooh, they have more in common. So I'm going to use the negative 6x here with the 3x squared. And then I will write the 7x, the positive 7x in the second parentheses and put that with the negative 14. Doesn't that make much more sense? So now I need to factor this by grouping. I grouped it, and now I need to factor out. So this reminds us of factoring out the greatest common factor. In my first parentheses, what do they have in common? I definitely see that they both have an x. X squared would be too big because x to the 1 power is too big for that one. So x. X could divide in here, x can divide inside of x squared. Do they have a number in common? Sure they do. It's 3. Because 3 can divide into 3 and it could divide into 6 evenly. So 3x is my greatest common factor for 3x squared and a negative 6x. Now I open up my parentheses and ask myself, this greatest common factor, 3x, times what would give me back 3x squared? Well, that would be x. 3x times x gives me back 3x squared. Remember the exponent rule. As you're adding up the exponent powers, it should get back to 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. 3x times what would give me back negative 6x? I notice that the x is already there. So 3 times what gives me back negative 6? That would be a negative 2. Close the parentheses. I repeat this process with the second parentheses. What do these two have in common? They don't have a letter, but they do have a number in common. That number would be a positive 7. Now I open up my parentheses and say positive 7 times what will give me back 7x? Well, that would be x. 7 times x equals 7x. Positive 7 times what will give me a negative 14? Well, I know a positive times a negative will give me back a negative. So this is positive, so this answer inside has to be negative. 7 times what gives you 14? That would be 2. Close the parentheses. Now you just factor by grouping. So I need to write my final answer as 2 binomial factors. How do I do that? I take my outside terms here, which is the 3x and the plus 7, and I put them in one parentheses, 3x and my plus 7. Those are my outside terms. They go in one parentheses together. And then notice that I can factor out something that they have similar. They have x minus 2. So I can write x minus 2 can get factored out. And this is my final answer. So factor out the greatest common factor, write the greatest common factors together in one parentheses, and the one factor that they both have in common, rewrite that, and that's your total final answer. And we know we can check our work by using the FOIL method to see that we'll get back the original equation that says, or expression that says 3x squared plus 1x minus 14. Now it's your turn.